Our agenda is the call to order and then introductions and roll call. Who's handling the roll call?
I am. Thank you. Are you ready? Okay. Kathy Clark.
Here.
Ross Day.
Here.
J.D. Gillis.
Here.
Gerard Graveline.
Here.
Roland Herrera is absent. Kyle Duran.
Here.
Dan Kohler.
Here.
Melissa Martin. I saw Melissa. Okay, got it. Ali Ruzuli.
Here.
Laura Reed.
Here.
Francisco Saldivar.
Here.
Hirsch Sangster.
Here.
Elizabeth Smith.
Here.
And Jonathan Thompson.
Here.
Thank you.
Tonight for public testimony, we have one person, and it's Carol Dorfler from the West Kaiser Neighborhood Association, so I'll let her talk. Carol, I just promoted you up. Looks like you're on mute though. You have 5 minutes. I'll go ahead and keep the timer here, and when we get down to about 4 minutes, I'll start waving my arms or giving you some kind of a audio cue. I'm not sure which, but
Maybe jump up and down.
I could do that. Or is yours, Carol?
Hi, everybody. I'm here as president of the West Kaiser Neighborhood Association to thank you all for considering refunding the West Kaiser Neighborhood Association. We tried to do real good things with our money, and this past year, we have been able to purchase 2 food barrels. Another one has been purchased. We've purchased signs. We've also purchased some brochures with that money. And I really think that it's helpful to get the word out in that manner. We do see neighbors attending neighborhood meetings now. Occasionally, it's just the board and I and perhaps the speaker, but most often there are some neighbors who show up for that. So I thank you again. I hope you'll consider refunding us again. We have greater visions to use that money for, but I'll reveal that at another time. So I thank you. Any questions?
Thank you so much for all you do in West Kaiser. Carol, did you see we got a bike repair station over there?
I did. It's my pleasure, Hirsch. This is a wonderful neighborhood. I'll tell you, after I ordered 2 more brochure boxes and some more signs today, that we have $2.09 left in our budget this year. So
that's the way to do a budget.
It was close. Thank you.
And I might add, I think using the double benefit of the food barrels, collecting food for the Kaiser Community Food Bank and having the West Kaiser name on it was really good marketing. Signs are something we see all the time and we can drive by and not see them, but having the food barrel there and that presence in the places that we go so frequently, like at Copper Creek Mercantile, I thought it was a really good partnership, very creative.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. I think that was all we had for public testimony, correct? You're on mute, Tim.
That is correct.
Okay. I think we'll move on to budget presentation and start off with the general service funds.
Okay, well, if you would turn with me to page 137. The general services fund or the general fund. This is, like I was saying Tuesday, kind of our junk drawer. This is where everything goes that isn't specifically required to be accounted for somewhere else. So this has the least amount of restrictions on what we can do with the funds, but it is also the most constrained in that we try to provide as much service as possible through this fund. This fund is the primary source for funding for the planning department, municipal court, and the police department. This fund also contributes a significant amount to the Park Services Fund, which we talked about on Tuesday. So you'll see some of the impacts of that. From a big picture standpoint, you're going to see the revenues and the expenditures actually going down. That's because of the impact of the $1.1 million in CARES grant funds that we got. So we got those and we spent them, and we're not accounting for the estimated 8 million ARP fund or ARP grant money just yet, because we don't know exactly what we can spend it on, or necessarily the timing. I've heard that we may start seeing some money next week, as early as next week, but it doesn't really help us if we don't know how to spend it. So we're going to wait to see what the dollar amounts are, and then we'll have to come back, similar to what we did with the CARES grant, back to the city council and say, this is our preliminary plan on how we think we can use these dollars best to serve the community. So there's going to be probably a lot more budgeting to go with the general fund once we figure out all the restrictions on how those funds can be used. The big picture, what you're going to be seeing is a slight increases in taxes and assessments. That's mostly property taxes, and that's mostly the 3% increase from the increase in assessed value. We're seeing pretty minimal increases as far as new construction goes. I think this year we're kind of estimating about 0.3% of an increase, so not a big amount. It used to be up to about the 5 or 6% area several years ago. So we're having to cinch our belts a little bit. With respect to intergovernmental, as I indicated, we're going to see the impact of that 1.1 million, but overall intergovernmental seems to be holding fair. That really consists of a lot of liquor tax, and that seems to be going pretty gangbusters right now. I keep thinking it's going to peak out at some point. It's got to peak out. Come on, folks, peak out here. I'm a little nervous about all that. License and fees, that's a lot of the franchise fees that you pay on your Comcast, Northwest Natural, PGE bill. By and large, we're seeing those coming in flat. We did see a slight increase this year as the result of the nesting effect. Kaiser really is a bedroom community. We have people that live here and typically go work elsewhere. But with the COVID-19, we had everyone working from home, so we did see a slight pickup in some of those areas, especially Comcast. Comcast has been slowly dipping over the last few years as people really try to cut the cord, but Comcast has come on a little bit. I wouldn't say strong by any means, but it did pick up a little bit during the year. I anticipate that'll flatten out and may even start to decrease again once everyone is going back to work, if they ever go back to work. So we'll have to keep our eye on that one. Fine and forfeitures, which is primarily traffic citations. That one is down a little bit. Primarily the COVID-19, people just aren't out on the roads wrecking havoc. So that's good. It's a positive thing that we're not seeing the citations, but still kind of a problem that we don't see the revenue. Big picture, you're going to see the planning department, like we talked about in the past on Tuesday. We did have the community development director retire. We promoted a planning director, but we didn't backfill the senior planner. So you're going to see the expenses there kind of account for that as well. Municipal Court's kind of holding its own. Not a lot of changes there, but like we talked about during the long-range planning meeting, we did upgrade the software this year. We're about 90% done with that project, so that'll be a nice one to have behind us. The police pretty much holding their own. Like we talked about, staffing is a big concern for me, and sure we can get up to full staffing there, but we'll talk about that when we get to the police budget. That's kind of the big picture overview. If you want to turn to the next page.
Tim, I got a question.
Oh, sure.
Back to the fines and forfeitures. I want to make sure I'm reading this right. The budget was 464,000, and the what it looks like we're going to get is about 60,000 shy of that. And you said that's because people aren't getting tickets and whatnot. Is there also some of that our judge or whatever, they're just they're kind of going easy on people because it's COVID, because of the pandemic? Is that as well, or do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
Specifically, I mean, our judge is typically pretty fair, and he hasn't really changed his practices as far as what he's been citing people. I really do think it's mostly just the number of citations that are written.
Okay.
And that's really just a product of a lot fewer people on the roads.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
And I'll jump in on that, Counselor Day, and I don't know this for certain, and maybe the chief can talk to this, but the judge complains, of course, because state statute, his maximum and minimum are so tight, he doesn't have a lot of discretion anyway. So on that kind of numbers, I doubt that much of the change would be anything to do with the court.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Tim, I have a question back on tax assessments. That's mostly property tax, correct?
Correct. That's mostly property tax. We have a little bit of sales tax in there as well.
The question I have is related. Most taxing districts do not actually collect 100% of the property taxes that may be owed in an area. And there is a tax collection rate for a lot of the districts. What is, COVID's thrown that off, but what has been Kaiser's collection rate percentage?
Sure. Well, right off the top, you tend to see a lot of discounts if people pay all of their taxes in October. So you see a big haircut there. Historically, it's been about 5% roughly of that initial discount. Over time, after you start factoring that out, we're closer to the 99.8% collection rate overall. I'm not counting the discount rates, but so once you start moving along, it's pretty, you really don't see a lot of lost property tax revenues just because we do have a lien on the property.
Do you think COVID might affect the collection rate, especially, everything's kind of in the arrears as far as the county and the Department of Revenue collections. So will we know before June exactly what our collection rate might be? Because I assume you're basing the figures here more on the 98% collection.
Correct. Well, for us, this is what month? This is April. No, this is May. So we'll be getting our final round of. Don't laugh at me, guys. It's been a little crazy week. So we'll get our final property tax payments probably next week, and that'll really tell us how much of the initial year assessments we collect. Then we really do track as part of our annual financial report each year how much of that each tranche of the years, how much we actually collected in the following years. So we really do get down to about the 99.989. Okay. So yeah, not a lot left on the table as far as property taxes go in Kaiser.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you turn to page 138, and I'll go ahead and share my screen with y'all.
Hey, Tim, there's a question, another hand up with a question.
Oh, there is. Okay.
Hey, Tim, I was just asking, you had mentioned how the typical construction growth added, I think you said historically a couple percent every year, and you guys are using an assumption that that's going to be lower. I don't disagree with that. I was just wondering what you were using for that assumption.
Typically, I go and look at the permits that we've issued over the last couple of years, well, I guess for the current year, and use that as a factor for what I think is going to happen into the future. I typically compare, the annual permit amounts that we issue, compare that to the historical amounts that have increased during those years, and use that as kind of it's pretty rough, but it gets me reasonably close.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have a question too. What I understood from a previous meeting, we're kind of at a maximum capacity for construction in the city of Kaiser. So we really don't have a lot more land to, build on to increase that tax base. Is that correct?
That is correct. Our buildable lands have been shrinking over time. We're not going to be seeing a lot of the big apartment complexes necessarily, or retirement homes. some of the big developments anymore like we've had in the past. So it's more of the infill, the 8 to 10 houses, maybe those kind of things. Shane can probably give you a little bit better feel if I put him on the spot.
Sure. Yeah. That Tim, that's accurate. I mean, just for a frame of reference, I think in the last 5 years, we have not approved a subdivision larger than 15 lots. In the big growth years of the 90s and the early 2000s, we still had some large parcels that, were getting much larger subdivisions. I think the other thing that we have, this year was a little bit hard too with COVID. We definitely saw a downtick for a bit because I think there was a lot of uncertainty in the market. But yeah, our land supply is definitely limited. And we've kind of identified through some other long-range studies, like our revitalization plan we adopted a year and a half ago, the bigger redevelopment, which I won't say it's unfortunate because I think it's fortunate. Some of the market study that was done with that plan kind of showed that our properties along our commercial corridors are actually of a value that they don't make a ton of sense for developers to come in, knock them down, and rebuild brand new things. So that's kind of, until that starts happening, or the city were to really incentivize some bigger redevelopment, it will be the smaller kind of onesie twosies that happen, because that's kind of what we have left.
How does the lack of actual buildable space versus demand impact property values or assessed values?
Well, I think, obviously, if you watch the real estate market, real estate prices are at all-time highs right now and continue to move up that way. And I think there's definitely that factor. Obviously, with the 3% cap, which Tim would be better to talk about that, but with the 3% cap, there were some lean years where I don't think we were getting that 3% increase after the 08-09 crash. But in recent years, I'm pretty sure we're all getting our 3% increases every year, because that's the max they can increase it by.
Yeah, to add on to that, real market values have skyrocketed. It's a good time to be a homeowner if you're looking to sell, not a good time if you're a home buyer looking to buy. The assessed value doesn't change. It's still limited to the 3% for the properties. So even if you sell, it doesn't necessarily impact the assessed value. So we're kind of locked into this 3% growth rate, which, I understand the reasons why it went into place, but it's still, for a city our size with the tax rate that we have, it's very limiting. Not a lot of discretionary funds for us to use.
Thank you.
Mayor Clark, you had a question?
I did. I was looking at on page 138, line 6, the sales tax is a pretty significant drop. Is that because we lost one of the stores, and 2, measure 110?
It's mostly measure 110. Sales have, one dispensary may have closed. The other one's picked up the slop, I guess. So from an actual sales standpoint, we're not seeing any real decreases yet in our sales tax. This is all strictly related to the legislature. So they give and then they took away.
Well, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So while we're talking about, is there any other questions I can answer for anyone real fast? Otherwise, I'll go through page 138 here kind of quick for us. Okay, so the current taxes, that's the current year's levy that we'll issue. And you can see that it's going up about 3.3% from last year's budgeted amount. So that is the 3% increase in assessed value and a little bit of room for some construction type growth. The prior year taxes, that's the amount that we collect on previous years. And that over time eventually gets us up to collecting about 99% of the 99.89-ish range of the amount that were authorized. The sales tax, again, as Mayor Clark indicated, we're seeing a significant decline. There was some legislation that passed that reallocated some of the shared revenues. So we're seeing a significant hit there. I'm a little bit disappointed in that, but I guess it is what it is. So when we start looking at the licenses and fees, as I was indicating, electric, natural gas, they're pretty much, I'm anticipating they're going to be flat. We're kind of at a little bit of a peak in experiencing some of the nesting effect. But I do anticipate they're not going to go significantly higher because we're going to start repeating and having people at home for the same amount of time during the upcoming year, the annualized effect of that. The telephone franchise fee continues to drop, although it slowed down a little bit this year. So I'm hoping that with people at home, they're still having some landline kind of issues. As I indicated, cable television, we saw it bounce back a little bit. I do anticipate that'll drop down once people start going back to work and kids back to school. Sanitation, they did do a rate increase. So what you're seeing now is an annualized impact of the rate increase that they did several months ago. So that's the big picture in the license and the fees. And then the intergovernmental, the cigarettes and liquor mostly, that cigarette tax continues to drop, although it didn't drop as much as I thought it was going to this year. So we had a little bit of a pickup. So again, people are home and smoking, I guess. Liquor tax, which is also liquor and the state revenue sharing, both of those are just keep growing up and up. We did move the state revenue sharing from its own fund last year into this area. So that's why you're not necessarily going to see an expense budget for it. This is the COVID money, that line 24, the grants from the state. The state got the money first and then turned around and gave it to us. And I can tell you a little bit when we get to the expense side what we did with that. Then we also got a grant from the county. We did use all that money. It was a 3-year grant. We used all the money in the first year, and they've been paying us back for the last 2 years. So I believe this will be the final payment that we'll get from them. Another area of concern is the stadium. I'm anticipating a significant drop from their historic numbers. Again, that's Volcanoes have moved to the Maverick League from the I'm not sure, I can't remember what they were. Their minor league status. They're now in their own status, I guess. So we're going to have to watch that one probably carefully over the next year to see kind of what activity happens there. So that's really the insight on the revenues. Is there any questions before we move on to some of the expenses? Okay, we're moving to page 140. So this, like I say, you kind of get a little hodgepodge of everything. This is the non-departmental area. And this truly is kind of where we shove a lot of different things. This is all the somewhat, I wouldn't say necessarily discretionary, but areas where we made some policy decisions over the past to have things here. So that you'll see the amount that we give to Kaiser United, the Heritage Center, Mid-Willamette Homeless Initiative, those kind of things throughout here. Not a lot of changes going on. You will see a big pickup in the administrative services charges. That is really associated with the administrative services fund that we talked about Tuesday. And there you're seeing some of the PERS impacts on the administrative salaries. You're also seeing the impact of the pergola project. So you're seeing probably a $50,000 increase just from that. Also, you're seeing the impact of contingencies. We don't necessarily use the contingency, so when we don't, then it kind of goes away in the previous year, and then we add it back, so you see a big jump up because of that kind of a thing as well. I think that's it. This is kind of the area where if we get really tight on funds, there can be some interesting discussions as far as people outside requesting money. For this year, with the outside budget request sheet that I sent out, the summary, we have included everyone's requests. We did not receive a request from the Southeast Kaiser Neighborhood Association, but I did include $300 for them. I personally feel, as the finance director, I kind of want to continue to build the inroads into that area of town. I think it's important that even though if we're kind of disaggregated and things are kind of a little off with COVID-19 and everything, I just want to make sure that they have the opportunity to continue to move forward with our help.
Thank you very much, Tim, on that thought.
Yeah, no, I think it's important for us to reach out there. There's a lot of good folks out there, and I think neighborhood associations, we get a huge bang for the buck there. They take our dollars and use them very wisely and very, very studiously. So
we may have another one in 2022.
Yeah,
Jonathan, right? We're going to work on that.
What area of town?
Hirsch is going to help us bolster the liquor tax and then get me to sign off on another neighborhood association.
It's right. We're off of Windsor Island now.
So any questions on the non-departmental? Mayor Clark?
Yes, I had a question on line 25 for the homeless initiative, or 24, the homeless initiative, which is now the Homeless Alliance. I don't remember that our allocation was increased, so I'm a little confused about the 15,000. Did it increase? And I missed that.
I had an agreement that we entered into where they had projected out that they wanted us to increase. I'm more than happy to take it back if we would rather not, but
no, it's good. There's a very good bang for the buck.
As I understand it, next year, just to prep everyone, I believe we're supposed to go to 20, and then I think that's where we level out.
I think it's, yeah. And also different organizations I have been joining, and hopefully what will happen is that as grants come online, the administrative costs for the Alliance will be covered by the administrative portion of the grants. But it's been a little bit of chicken egg getting that going, but projects are coming online all the time, which has been fabulous. So I want to double check on that.
Any other questions?
I have a question, Tim. So we have $300 budgeted for the Southeast Kaiser Neighborhood Association. There's $1,500 here. Am I to assume then that's $600 for the other two associations?
That is correct. Let's see. The West Kaiser asked for $550, and the Greater Gubser asked for $650.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Well, if there's no more questions, then I'd say let's move on to page 142. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Shane Witham, the planning director.
All right, thank you, Tim. Yeah, so bear with me, budget committee members. This is my first budget going through, so it's kind of all new to me. I will preface this by saying I am a land use planner, so we work in words. We don't really work in numbers very often. So numbers questions, I might have to defer or pivot a little bit towards Tim, but I'll do my best. I think Tim has kind of pretty much stole all of my thunder and explained kind of the big changes to our budget. For the most part, the budget is we're carrying forward pretty on a normal keel on what we're spending. However, you can see throughout that we are saving a significant amount of money. And that is primarily due to the restructuring of the department. Longtime community development director retired, and now there is me. So I think one of the things that I do want to make sure I put out there to the budget committee members is that this is something that obviously this is what we're projecting and proposing for this upcoming year. Just with the caveat that we are trying to watch really closely that the staffing level is sustainable for us. The city is in a position where we are seeing reduction in building and development because of a lack of land supply. Those things could change. We've already kind of been very successful in kind of retooling our department to where we've been able to actually pick up and do a lot more with the code enforcement world. Our building permit specialist has been a huge asset for us in that as she has had a little more time with not just processing the building permits, she's been able to just do a great job assisting Ben, our code compliance officer, with administrative support. So we were really excited. We were able to implement some new free software through our building permit program and a code module over the last, well, it's been on board for a full year and a half now. And we were able to finally track our code enforcement activity, which we've never been able to do in the past. And we closed like 686 cases in the year, which is a lot for one guy. So I think it's that's one of those resources that as we look at neighborhood livability, as we look at the community as a whole, I think, you could throw unlimited amounts of money at the code enforcement world and just provide additional services. I think we do a great job providing excellent services with the limited resources we have. But ideally, I would love to see us in the future be able to do some expansion of that and to provide even more service to the community. But we do have a little bit of money in for some grant expenditures this upcoming year. We're hopeful that we can possibly obtain a grant and use some money for matching. But other than that, this last year we didn't get to do training because of COVID, and so we're hoping that those things come back online. And I think other than that, I don't really have anything real specific to point out. Other than I would say this is, even though we are funded out of the junk drawer, we are not the junk planning. We try to do quality things. So anyway, so I like to say, hey, I should get big kudos because our department is saving some money this year. So I'll take any questions.
Hey, Shane.
Yes.
Hey, I was just looking here at your line for postage and printing, and we could save you some money there if 18 people in my neighborhood didn't all get letters from your office last year. So we'd be happy to save you some money there on behalf of my neighborhood. We're here for you.
Thanks.
Nice try. I do have a question.
Go ahead.
So as everything had to pivot from in-person to online, one of the things that I heard that your department did was to be able to do Zoom meetings with our contractors and to be able to receive more documentation electronically rather than in print form. Mm-hmm. Was that part of the efficiencies that you all noted for not only yourselves, but I heard that the contractors really like this in-out done approach. World class. First class all the way, but that approach to getting their permits and so forth processed.
Yeah, Mayor Clark, that definitely is true. As far as building permits go, there's been online abilities for a while. We're through the state e-permitting system, so it's not actually our system, but we use it because we're basically a satellite office of Marion County, and they were able to roll forward additional accessibility for homeowners in light of COVID, and that really helped. And then, yes, using the Zoom platform for a lot of our pre-application meetings and pre-development meetings has been extremely well received by a lot of the development community, because people oftentimes are in different cities or different offices. So that's definitely been extremely helpful for us as a department to kind of do more with less, if you will.
I have a quick question, if it's, or just something to say anyway. I just want to say thanks, Shane and your department, for distributing the business CARES funds and such that we received. There was a lot of work that your department did, and I appreciate being able to work with you on what you did.
Absolutely. It was our pleasure. And thank you, Councilor Kohler, because I know you helped us get the word out to businesses, and I had several come in that you had talked with. So that was great. And yeah, I'd have to say Dina Russell, our assistant planner, was a huge asset to me in helping get those funds out through the Business Oregon program and the grant we got for that. So, and of course, Tim, he took care of the money for me because, as I said, numbers, not so much Shane's forte.
Any additional questions? If not, I say let's move on to page 144. This is Municipal Court. And as I indicated before, we're just kind of keeping on right now.
Sure looks like.
We're seeing, like I indicated, we saw a drop in the municipal court fines for the year. Our past due collections, we work with Valley Credit, and they've been doing a pretty excellent job over the last several years of collecting on our past dues. It's amazing how many people don't take care of their traffic fines and citations. So as we went through the conversion, it was kind of a little bit of a sticker shock. I knew the number was out there, but it was a lot bigger. This keeps growing. So we do actively, and I wouldn't say aggressively, but we do actively go after a lot of the past due accounts. Staffing is remaining the same, and our materials and services is remaining the same. One of the things to note is that we do have a pretty solid pro tem judge right now as well. Patrick Mercurio. He's been helping us. Judge Myers has been getting him on board. I keep getting nervous that Judge Myers may be thinking about retirement. And I keep telling him he has 23 more budgets to go with me, but he does not like that idea. So with that, if there's any questions on the municipal court budget.
Nope.
Okay. Seeing none, let's go ahead and move on to page 145, the police department budget. With this, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chief Teague, and he can kind of give you the rundown of what's happened and what to expect in the future.
Okay, thank you. I want to give some kudos to Shane, though, when I start off. Code enforcement is a vital part of what we do in the police department. We're grateful for the relationship we have with his department and code enforcement. The police operations budget's a big budget. There aren't a whole lot of changes this year. I will run down the list for some anomalies with you. If you have any questions, just interrupt me. You'll notice at the very top of page 145 under beginning balances with donations, the canine donations, we're predicting those to be about 20% less, and those are always just a wild guess where they're going to come in. The civil and criminal forfeitures, however, are less of a wild guess, but we're predicting those to not increase substantially, probably. Again, if they do, it will likely be the rare occasion, and that's a direct result of ballot measure 110. We just have a hard time getting into many of these distributors. I will tell you, though, that we are working those religiously and continue to do so along with Drug Enforcement Administration and the feds. Dropping down to line 18 on Blast Camp. Those are police donations, but we don't expect to see much in regards to donations from Blast Camp. Blast Camp, you should know, is an acronym for bringing law enforcement and students together. It's a program we put on here in Kaiser. We host about 200. We aim for low-income children to develop that relationship with the police. We have multiple agencies that show up. We hold it at a school in the city, and the parents that are thankful throw contributions towards us for that, as well as some of the members in the business community. We did not have it last year due to COVID. We would have it this year in July, except that it takes so much effort to get it stood up. There are so many moving pieces that unless we can know for sure that we're going to be able to have it, we've decided it's more prudent not to plan not to have that. Subsequently, it's unlikely that we'll see much in the way of donations come in, although some people are still interested in providing those. It's obviously a very small amount of money in this large budget. Dropping down to line 40, overtime. We budget about 4% of our personnel costs for overtime. That some agencies earmark about 6%. We've been pretty good about managing overtime, in no small part because our union has agreed to train on duty as far as their required training through DPSST. We call that in-service training. We don't pay overtime for that in-service training. Out of that budgeted $198,000 year in, year out, we spend a mere few thousands of dollars, if even that, on training. The bulk of this line item is for operations. The reason why this year and in 1920 that came in pretty low, $160,000, because we haven't had any tremendously significant investigations, but we always budget as if we might. Line item 42, overtime community events. This year we had no community events, except that we had those massive fires. We ended up spending quite a bit of overtime helping with those fires, $16,000 worth. We did not want that to appear in operations. We wanted to separate that. Seemed the best place to do that was to put in community events, because that was otherwise going to be a zero in that column. So that's why you see that 16,000 there. We're budgeting 9,500 for next year, figuring we will have parades. However, if you happen to think about it, next year you'll see us blow through that $9,500, because we just heard at the last council meeting that the Chamber of Commerce is planning on hosting the Irish Parade, this year's Irish Parade in August. So that'll have us providing overtime to 3 parades this coming fiscal year, with the Irish Parade held in both August and then I assume next May, and of course anticipate the Festival of Lights Parade in December. So that's it for this page, unless there are some questions. Okay, page 146. Line item 52, again, it's not much of an expense, but you'll see the cadet program increase there rather substantially. That's because in the next fiscal year, let me back up a little bit. That's because they attend an event called the Law Enforcement Challenge. It's been held for 40 years. The 41st Law Enforcement Challenge would have been held last year, but it was canceled for COVID. That is a challenge that for which many cadet and explorer law enforcement groups meet together at Camp Rylea to have a competition. Our guys participate in that. Our cadets participate in that, and you should know they do rather well year in, year out. Because of COVID, it may be the case that in this coming fiscal year, they'll end up holding 2 events, one late this summer and one next spring. Again, both in this fiscal year, which is why that's increased that substantial amount, although in real dollars, it's not very much money. Looking at line items 59 or line item 59, meetings, travel, and training. This is what our training expenses come out of, and you can see we didn't spend very much this last year, again, due to COVID. Labor attorney, we budgeted $35,000. And slide item 62. We budgeted $35,000 and spent just $10,000. We budgeted $35,000 because we anticipated be going into negotiations for the union contract. In fact, that was done without having to spend a whole lot of money or a whole lot of time. The contract's good for 2 years. Next year, we're budgeting $20,000, and you can see that in 1920 we actually only spent about 17. So we budget high, but plan to spend low. Contractual services, line item 63, we budgeted an additional, about $7,000 for next year. A good chunk of that is for a contractor to get us through reaccreditation. We got accredited for the first time 3 years ago. We'll be up for that again next April. We anticipate continuing to be an accredited agency. We frankly don't have the time or the energy or the manpower inside the PD to do that, so we contract someone to carry us through that. By the way, we tried for over 10 years to get that done without hiring a contractor, and it is just too time consuming.
Please ask a question.
Say again, JD?
I just had a question for you. Can you explain what that accreditation means?
Yeah, accreditation, there are 2 main accrediting bodies in Oregon for police departments. One is CALEA, which is a national organization, and the other is the Oregon Accreditation Alliance, which is an accrediting body both in Oregon and in Alaska. And it has a number of criteria, about 160 points that they come in and assess not only your policies, but you have to have proof that you're meeting your policies. So not only your policies, but your practices to make sure you're meeting best practices, and should be a reputable and reliable police department. By the way, if you happen to be paying attention to it, there's a bill before the legislature now, which the chiefs and sheriffs worked on. It's likely that you'll see accreditation being mandatory for some agencies. We would have been one of those agencies, but we've already met that bar.
Is that based on population?
It's be based on population, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You bet. The last one that I have to comment about is line item 80, hiring expenses. We were approved for about $10,000 for this fiscal year. We're likely going to go through that because we're preparing. We don't know what our hiring ability is going to be on the heels of the budget. There's 4 factors that are weighing in on this. Of course, the budget approval, the police fee approval, whether or not the police fee is increased, and then we're still dealing with the schools on whether or not they're going to hire police officers or not. So those 4 factors affect whether we can hire. We want to be ready to hire July 1 if we have green lights, and that's why we're front loading this fiscal year to the tune of about $5,000 more. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Chief, back up on the cadet program. Did you have cadets at all during this COVID time?
We did.
Okay.
We had 8 cadets.
How do we, I guess for a lap back, do we work through McNary, or how do we get these recruits, so to speak?
Yeah, a lot of it's through McNary High School, and some of it's word of mouth, but a lot of it's through McNary High School. It's the cadets and the reserves, by the way, that you see out at the Music in the Park. They do a good job representing us.
You've used them for the monster cookie too.
Oh yeah, and the parades. They're very reliable. They're great kids, let me tell you.
It's good to have as many. You may want to think about branching out besides just McNary. Maybe the private schools might have an interest too.
Oh sure. We've had homeschoolers. We've had private schoolers from Willamette School, whatever it is. But the bulk of them come from McNary.
Great. Thank you.
Chief Teague, I'd just like to point out to you that if you had electric police cars, you could save on gasoline.
That's true.
Chief, I know you got 4 bicycles.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
You do have 4 bicycles in the locker.
We do have bicycles. Actually, Councilor Day, those electric police vehicles are not far in the future. There are prototypes that are out there.
By the way, I have an electric bicycle, so an e-bike. That might be a good police bike in the future too.
Yeah, the guys need the work.
I saw some rollerblading police videos. That looked pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Nurse Clark, you had a question?
I did. Looking at line 74 at the Willamette Valley Communications Center, the rate increase for Willamette Valley Communications once again is significantly more than what we get from the phone taxes. I mean, it's not even close. So this is not the total bill. This is just the part that we see. We don't even see that bill anymore. Am I correct?
That's correct. Do the legislature go straight to the WVCC at their option?
During 2021, we're anticipating that we'll see about $150,000 of 911 tax, reducing our bill. That $570 or $543,900 for this year. That's the net amount after that amount has been applied to it. So it's a costly endeavor there, but we get a lot of service for what we pay for as well.
Well, I understand that. Years ago, it was sold with the idea that our phone taxes were actually going to be able to cover that, and that ship sailed a long time ago. That hasn't been the case. I don't disagree at all with the level of service that we do receive with the consolidated communications, but it's a very significant chunk, and it's one that's worth taking note of. How many agencies are involved with Willamette Valley Communications Center?
I handed that off to Trevor Winning about 2 years ago when I was last involved. There were 22 agencies. And there's tremendous economies of scale there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any additional questions at this point? Okay. So again, like one of the funds that we talked about last Tuesday, revenue sharing has moved into the other areas of the general fund, so we don't have a specific carve-out department for it. So this really does conclude the general fund. So Ali, if you want to do your, or Councilor Day, do you have?
Yeah, I had a question, and I apologize. I meant to ask this. On the police operations in the general fund, is the police fee, is that the reference to that the police services fund?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. That's all. I just wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not hearing that we want to get the police department more bicycles then.
I'm all for it. If you can get bikes now. There's a shortage of bicycles in the United States.
I thought maybe it was part of a health action.
Well, it would be part of a wellness program, that's for sure. But Chief, you're going to have them all out riding on the Monster Cookie in August, right?
Sure.
It's right here in Kaiser.
We'll be participating on bicycles or not.
We even have a short mini cookie.
We have a long, happy relationship with that, don't we, Hirsch?
Yeah, got it. 28 years now?
Yep.
Okay, any further questions? All right, seeing none, then I make a motion for approval of the General Services Fund.
I move that we approve the General Services Fund as outlined.
Second.
All right, then let's hear all in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, hearing none opposed, motion passes unanimously. And we'll move on to the special purpose funds. Tim?
Okay, the first fund to look at, and from here on out, each of the funds individually will need to be approved, a motion to approve them. So the Police Services Fund, we started this in 2017, so we're getting up to 4 years, almost 5 years as far as the activity goes. Throughout that time, we have not increased the police fee at all. It's remained at the $4 per month for single family residents. We've been talking over the last several years that we are getting to the point where we need to start thinking about increasing this. At the long range planning time, with the preliminary numbers, I initially thought that we should start thinking about a $2 increase. I've scaled that back, and I'm really just asking for a $1 increase this time. So you will be looking at $5 per month for single family residences. That's going to add about $104,000 to this budget. I think the point to note is that we're transferring out of this fund more than what it would be bringing in, even with that $1 increase. So if you look at line 13, our contingency line item, we're going to start to see that whittle away. When this fee was first established, it was more than we needed to spend each year, and with the idea that we would save up some of those dollars to try to defer and use a lower sloped increases than doing super large jumps at any given time. So we wanted to kind of ease into this if possible, so we don't get a lot of sticker shock with residents when they see things double or triple or anything like that. So again, with this, we're looking at about a 15% increase as we do a $1 increase, and this does have a January 1st effective date, so that would be January 1st, 2022. I guess that's the major points that I would make, and it's really kind of a policy decision of whether you want to see, kind of slow, continual growth in this fund, or if you want to see significant step-ups every couple of years to try to keep up. With respect to what we're paying for, the average police officer, just regular police officer, salary and wages type of expenses is about $138,000 a year. So that includes their retirement and their wages, that kind of a thing. It doesn't include their paid time off, which is factored in, that we're going to be paying the same amount whether they're working or whether they're on their vacation or out sick, that kind of a thing. In addition to that, we do factor in about $22,000 per officer. That covers an allocation for their computer, their vehicle, their personal protective gear, a little bit of some of the office supplies, gas, ammo, that kind of a thing. So with that, if there's any questions at this point.
Tim, will there be more public hearing, so to speak, on the dollar increase?
Yes, there will. Since we are looking at a fee increase, we'll have to take this and have probably a hearing at one of the city council meetings.
Good. Those are always helpful in the long run.
Yes.
Hey, Tim?
Yes.
I would just like to point out in support of this increase that you guys are holding up your end of the bargain and not just shifting general fund dollars away from the police and backfilling with this fund, because again, we've got another 3.6% increase in general fund dollars going to the police. So there's no shell game going on here. So
Right.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, very much so.
Yes, it's actually absorbing a little bit more than what you're seeing in the or a lot more than what you're seeing in the revenue growth. So we're still trying to allocate, and I think honestly what we're really seeing is some of the savings from the community development director have shifted here, so that we can deal with some of the things like the PERS increase, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, can you talk to your thought process about stepping back from the $2 increase and why you decided to move forward with the $1?
Well, we ended up just being in a better spot, really just a matter of time. When we talked back in early March, I believe, was it February? I think it was February. That was really working off of a half a year of data at that point. And, unfortunately, a lot's changed in the last 3 or 4 months. So it's really just better information. I think some people, when we put the long range plan together, think, oh, you've already done the budget, everything's done and said for. No, we still have a lot of budgeting to do. So I think we just had some additional cost savings that got factored in that made it so that we didn't really have to use that much. Some of it is the COVID-19 CARES grant funds that we got. That helped us do a lot of things that we wanted to do and had kind of budgeted for, but it kind of let us save some of those dollars. So I think that was part of the impact that we saw as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question too. So this police fund is sort of a way that the police can be funded without having to actually ask taxpayers to fund an operating levy, so to speak. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so in reality, this is a cheaper or less expensive way for residents to pay for police operations than an operating levy would actually be, because you have to pay for all that campaign work and stuff. So I just wanted to kind of point that out as well.
That is correct. When we started looking at the cost analysis of what we would have to do for an operating levy, also the uncertainty, if you think about the Marion County Fire Department right now, they're hurting, and they got to get an operating levy passed, unfortunately, and it's a challenge. And I get it. I get that people don't like taxes, and I get that people don't like fees that look like taxes. I get that. But this really was the least cost way to do it, and it seemed to be fairly equitable as well. I think that factored in as a lot. You know, when you disperse it about among the households rather than just the property owners, you're really seeing some of the people who are seeing the benefits who are living here. So I think in the end, I think it turned out pretty well for what we've done. Go ahead, Councilor Day.
So if the math isn't right, I apologize, but is it basically every $1 increase we get about one officer or close to an officer?
That'll be roughly close, yes.
Okay.
I think with the opera trying to get a levy, we would be very restricted in Kaiser for even establishing an amount, would we not? I think, aren't we pretty well restricted on the amounts that we can even do in Kaiser?
I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you what the restrictions would be as far as what we could do with an operating levy.
We couldn't go much more than $2.08 per thousand.
Yeah, I would assume we couldn't go that high, but there's no reason we would need to. I mean, that would be what, $6 million, which I'm sure the chief would love, but come on now.
Well, if I may, when we were talking about the fees, we wanted to make sure that we were collecting fees that were purchasing a level of service. And I remember we were talking about if we were collecting more than we were going to be providing, that didn't make sense. So tracking this separately has helped us be more transparent with the fees that have been collected, how they've been used, and the level of service they are providing. And that level of accountability is going to be really important. And it is important that everybody knows what these dollars are doing for the community for public safety services.
Agreed. And I also think maybe, I mean, this is probably a little bit off subject, but in hearings and stuff, I think it's important for the community to understand that this is a way that it places the burden on everybody as opposed to just property owners.
Very good.
I think it's also important for this conversation, and again, this is more of a policy issue than a budget issue, but you know, in a sort of national context where people are calling for defunding the police, and we're looking to increase our funding in the police. You know, again, as Kathy says, just the amount of service we're providing to the community through the way that we do our policing. You know, all of the reformations that we're hearing about nationally, our guys are already doing. And so I think that should be an important part of that conversation.
God bless you, Councilor Reed.
Any additional questions? Okay, I'll turn it back over to you, Allie.
Is this one we have to approve separately?
Yes, for all of the ones coming up through the rest of the night, we'll have to do separately.
Okay, cool. Any further questions then? All right, then motion to approve the Police Services Fund.
I move that we approve the Police Services Fund.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, hearing none, motion passes unanimously, and we move on to the community center.
The community center has taken a beating this year.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing the big zero as far as projected revenues for rental fees, but I think it's going to be the reality, unfortunately. With the COVID-19 restrictions, we did make the decision to shut down the event center in October. And as I indicated at that point, we also ended up laying off 2 employees, the event center host and also the administrative specialist who primarily supported the community center, provided a significant amount of support to the community center. And so you're going to see a significant decrease in the personnel services line item. As we look into the next year, we are looking to add back at least one of the 2 employees that we had budgeted in this fund during this current year. We'll pay close attention to how the revenues start to shape out and the activity. If we need to, we'll go ahead and come back with a supplemental budget to add in dollars for a second event host. We had relied historically a lot on temporary help, and we were kind of hoping that we could move away from that and move to more of a full-time employee who's working more of a swing shift to help out with the events that happen at night. And that just didn't pan out. We kind of got up to the gate as far as the recruitment process and kind of backed out. And I guess it's a good thing that we backed out because, with the pandemic impact, we would have had to lay that position off as well. So ultimately, the plan is to have 2 employees here that help support this, one that works mostly doing the contracts, setting up during the day, and then someone who can be there to help during the events as well. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tracy, and she can give you a little bit more details on what to expect here.
Thanks, Tim. You kind of took the whole story away. There's really not much to report. For anybody that isn't aware, there is a 9,000 square foot community center that connects the wing to the city hall wing, and we rent that out for events. But since March of 2020, there has not been much activity in that portion of the building. We have been able to hold, in fact, today was a Marion County vaccine clinic here, and we have a blood drive. But other than that, it's been pretty quiet over there. Hopefully we can open summer, fall, and get moving again. So I can answer any questions, but like I said, there's not much to talk about other than lots of canceled events.
I have one for you, Tracy.
Okay, go ahead, JD.
I scrolled my way out of here. Oh.
Any other questions? If not, I'll turn it over to Ali.
All right, hearing no questions. Motion to approve the community center funds.
I move that we approve the community center funds.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Okay, hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And we move on to the Public Education Government Fund.
Thank you, Ali. Unfortunately, Comcast has caught up with us. For many years, we've been kind of avoiding renegotiating our contract for PEG fees. Unfortunately, we've kind of come to the point where we're needing to renew the contract. There was some legislation that came out a long time ago that is going to be integrated into this agreement, which means that going forward with the PEG fees, this is the amount that's tacked on to your Comcast bills. We're only going to be able to use that money for television equipment. We're not going to be able to use it for broadcasting. I don't know when the actual agreement will be signed and put into place, but the time is kind of coming, and I've budgeted accordingly. So on line 5, you're going to see a significant decrease in the PEG fees. This is a situation where we can't just keep collecting the same amount if we're not actually going to use that amount on television equipment. Ultimately, that would be a bad use of taxpayer money and not look good for anyone involved. So we've scaled back what the request is of a more reasonable amount of what we could be spending on television type of equipment. So for this upcoming year, we do have money in the budget to continue with the normal production. We're going to be using some of the funds that we've collected in the past, but we do kind of have a deadline that we're going to have to figure out how to do the broadcasting without having people doing production services for us. So I really appreciate the K23 folks over the last bazillion years that they've been with us. They've done an excellent job, and they're actually going to help us with this transition to figure out something that takes a little bit less labor to manage, something that we'll be able to handle on our own. So we are going to be spending some money updating some of the television equipment in anticipation of that. We're going to have to start thinking about, what areas do we want to continue to broadcast, and if there's areas that we might need to think about scaling back a little bit as well. Other than that, probably for most of 21-22, it will be pretty much business as usual. Our agreement with K23 does end in January 2022. So we'll probably have to start making some decisions well before that time as far as the future of what we're going to be doing here. So with that, if there's any questions. I'm not seeing any questions. So Ali, I turn it back to you.
Any questions either? Okay, then make a motion to approve the Public Education Government Fund.
I move that we approve the Public Education Government Fund.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, hearing none opposed, motion passes unanimously. And we move on to the Housing Rehabilitation Fund. Devin?
Okay. Well, the next two funds, the Housing Rehabilitation Fund and the Energy Efficiency Revolving Loan Fund, it's basically the same answer for what's going on. These two funds are revolving loans. We've taken in federal grants, state grants kind of thing. We've turned around and in one situation, we've helped lower income housing folks remodel their houses. In the other instance, we helped probably a lot of the same types of folks make their houses more energy efficient. So at this point, we're really just waiting for these folks to pay back their loans. These are zero interest loans. So typically what happens is we see the payment come back to us when the property owners decide to sell their properties or when they decide to refinance. And at that point, since we have a lien on the property, we end up getting paid out at both of those times. With the housing rehab, there's approximately $244,000 outstanding of loans that are out in the community waiting to be paid back. With the energy efficiency, there's about $80,000. What the policy that was set several years ago is that when we see half of the dollars come back into the fund, we'll go ahead and look at trying to loan the dollars back out into the community again. With the housing rehab, we need to collect about $67,000 more, have $67,000 of loans come back to the city, and that will trigger us looking to do a new program. For the energy efficiency, we're looking for about $50,000 more to come in, and that will be the trigger for that fund. In both cases, we're talking probably about 6 to 8 property owners either refinancing or selling their homes. And we typically see maybe 1 or 2 a year at most. So we still have a couple of years to wait on both of these funds. We do need to make a motion for each of the funds, unfortunately. But if there's any questions at this point, I'd be free to address it for either the housing rehab or the energy efficiency.
So we're not receiving, or the city isn't receiving any payments from these folks until they actually sell their home or refinance it? Is that what you're saying? Or are there some people that are making?
No, they aren't on a monthly payment plan. These are all lump sum payments at the time of typically the time of a financial transaction. These property owners do have the option. They could pay it off at any given time, but with a zero interest loan, there's typically not a lot of incentive for them to think about that.
Right.
Any additional questions?
Okay, hearing no questions. Motion to approve the Housing Rehabilitation Fund.
I move that we approve the Housing Rehabilitation Fund.
Second.
Got it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Okay. Hearing none opposed, motion passes unanimously. And we move to the energy efficiency loans. Tim?
So you can go ahead and take a motion on this one as well if you're ready.
Okay. Any questions on this one? Okay, hearing no questions. Motion to approve the energy efficiency loans.
I move that we approve the Energy Efficiency Revolving Loan Fund.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously with the energy efficiency revolving loans funds. And we move to the Kaiser Station LID. Tim?
Thank you, Ali. Well, this is the final fund for the night, so I appreciate all of your patience with me. The Kaiser Station LID fund, the city put in a lot of infrastructure at Kaiser Station back in the 2008 time period. We ended up financing it for the property owners out there. So this is the fund where we created a local improvement district, and we're collecting assessment payments from the property owners at Kaiser Station, and we turn around and use those to pay down a significant amount of debt every year. So not a lot of changes with this. We have about 10 years left on the payment plan that we're on, and then we'll be done with this fund. We are still in the process of looking at refinancing this once we get some human capital bandwidth to be able to do that project. So with that, if there's any questions.
All right, not hearing any questions. Motion to approve the Kaiser Station LID.
I move to approve the Kaiser Station LED fund.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Second.
I was getting a little nervous there.
Yeah.
We're doing so well.
Sorry, I was, yeah, sorry. I second though. How's that?
That's fine.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, I don't, hearing none. A motion passes unanimously.
Well,
I think we're moving.
That concludes all of our funds. So I'll turn it over to Ali for the final couple of motions that we need to make as far as closing out this process. Again, I thank all of you for being willing to contribute some significant amount of time to this. It does kind of make for a long week. I definitely appreciate that, but I do appreciate your input. So thank you.
All right, motion to approve the City of Kaiser budget for fiscal year 2021 and 2022 as amended by the Budget Committee.
I move that we approve the Kaiser City budget for 2021-22 as amended by the City Budget Committee.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Going to the next one. Motion to impose the full permanent tax rate of $2.08 and 38 per 1,000 of assessed value on the tax rolls of the City of Kaiser for fiscal year of 2021 through 2022.
I move that we pass a motion to, or that we make, I move to impose the full permanent tax rate of $2.08.0838 per 1,000 of assessed value on the tax rolls of the City of Kaiser for fiscal year 2021-22.
Seconded. I think it's already been written in stone, so.
Yeah, I know, but okay.
I know.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? Okay, hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Anything else for the good of the order?
I'd just like to say thank you, Ali, for being willing to chair this year, and thank you, Laura, for being the vice chair as well. So, thank you.
My pleasure.
And
Chair, thank you everybody for.
If any of you are near City Hall, feel free to stop by and we can talk money. It'll be fun.
So wait, we're getting paid for this? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I heard.
You're getting more zeros.
I only heard he was going to talk about money. I don't think there was anything about handing it out, just talking about it.
The check's in the mail.
I was going to double all your salaries, actually.
Talks cheap.
That's all I have. Thank you.
It was great to see some of the new members of the committee this year, and I appreciate your participation and being here.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you everybody for your hard work on this. We're now adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Sally, excellent job.
Thank you.